Man, I swear every time I stream, especially like in the morning, I'm always just so tired. It's so weird because the longer it goes on, it's like the less tired I get. But just when it starts and kind of like having to will myself to get up is always the biggest problem. Oh, but it feels really nice to be able to do one of these from here. It's been such a long time since that's been possible. Next to the very uh, unappealing summer where people don't have to go to school, so they just sit at home all day. It's actually one of the scariest aspects of, I guess, of just life when you think about the idea that if people didn't have work or school, they would just never leave their home. Like they would never go and hang out with their friends. They would never go to a museum and learn. So it's kind of disturbing just when you think about how public education has to force people to be like the slightest bit sociable or like interested in learning anything. Like if it weren't for them, there would just be no attempt by parents to educate children. I don't know. I just think the more you start to kind of wonder what things would be like if their role wasn't there, it's like it gets more and more disturbing just with the implication. But yeah, I haven't seen Jem in so long. He's been a very absent presence, and I'm very disappointed that he's decided to dodge watching any stream I do in favor of checking out Barbie over and over. I mean, I get it. It's a masterpiece film. People are excited for it. They're very interested. They want to see it until they can't see it anymore, until they have every line possibly memorized, along with buying the album and singing all the songs on there. But I just wish he would show up once more because, he used to be one of my most prolific members, and now I don't see him at all. Such a tragedy. I mean, I don't know what happened to him. You have no idea how nice it feels to not have to get up and drive somewhere just to talk to people for an hour to 2 hours. It's nice. I said before, what ends up happening is when you don't have the like most basic of luxuries, um, it whenever you can like actually just do something without having to go through any extra effort, it feels good. I have to admit, I was pretty annoyed yesterday and the day before that because I had this one shirt that um, I didn't know where I put it, and I don't want to have to go and get another one, so I'm going to keep looking for it. I have I have an idea of where it might be, and I hope it is where I think it is because if not, it's going to be a I don't know. I just it's always crazy when you have something you think you know where it is, but because maybe there's other stuff there, it's harder to pull it out or find it, and then you just kind of are left, you know, scrambling for it. So I hope I'm able to recover it. No, the Gen Z video was able to get several hundred views and be watched by some people. Set like it watched and commented on by several people I'd never even seen before. That's actually a very common occurrence on this site where you'll have like a tiny group of people that are used to watching your stuff, and then there will be these people that just come out of nowhere. Like they you've never seen them before. They're not subscribed to you, and after they leave their comment on that one video, there's like a 90 something percent chance you're never going to see them again. and you could make a video on the exact same topic and they'll never reappear. It really is the weirdest thing to me because I feel like unless the person doesn't make content after they make a video I like, I feel like I'm pretty consistent with, okay, here's this channel I enjoy. I don't know. I've never, I can't think of an instance where, like, there's been instances where there's channels I watch because something they made appeared in the recommended, but I almost never leave comments on the videos of people that I don't watch regularly, like people that I've watched. Like, for example, I've had my problems with Secular Talk, but I've left hundreds of comments on his channel, just every now and again when I watch one. And I'm not even like I don't think I'm as prolific a viewer as I used to be. But I throw him a bone. I try to give him a view here or there. Nothing wrong with showing your support for someone. It's just kind of weird when you look at a lot of these other people where they have no vested interest in you or your content, but then they leave like the most impassioned comments about whatever the topic is, and you know that it's all fake and not real and not even like worth engaging with because they're going to vanish after they leave that comment. They're going to be a one and done. It's been about maybe about a week since I did that video. Not a single one of those guys reappeared. Tell you, anytime there's a video that gets a few hundred views or like close to 1,000 or even sometimes above that, it seems like almost every person that leaves a comment is someone I've never seen before and never will see again. That's like the unwritten rule of getting a little bit of attention on one of these things. I can't wait to see this person's video in my recommended and then leave a comment about whatever they're talking about and then act like they don't exist for the rest of the remainder of all time. Yay. And nobody besides me seems to think that's weird. Like, I see some people get excited. Ooh, I got a new comment today. But again, my thing is just I tend to not really. I don't know. I guess when you've been on this site for so long, and you've had instances where, let's say, there was some video a lot of people watched, there was some video that did better than what you normally produce. Um, you've kind of seen the same false alarm cycle of like, oh man, a hundred, excuse me, 700 views on this video in 2 days. Wow, I must really be growing. And then like 3 weeks later, you're still getting your 10 and your 20 and your 50 and your 100, and you're just like, okay, well, never mind. And that's happened several times this year where there's just been a video that everyone was watching for like that first day or those first 2 days, and then people just jump ship. And it's not even just like, oh, they stop watching the video, because that happens, right? The longer something's out, the less people watch it usually. But it's bad because they really could trick a lesser experienced person into believing that you're finally making it, you're going somewhere on this site, and you're not. But there's a lot of false alarms like that I just think tend to be more harmful than good in the long run. Like, it's cool when it happens, right? Oh, a few more views, but in general, these people, they're all part of an attempt by this website to try and trick you into working harder on the premise that you're going to get some kind of reward for it. But the reward usually is just being watch for like a day or two and then just throw them back into the dustbin of people that they don't check out. Let me position this differently. No, that's always the funniest thing of this site. Oh my god, people are watching me, yay! And then about a week or two later, it's all back to the usual. Like it doesn't even take a week. Sometimes it's like 2 days, 3 days. That's why I stopped responding to comments because it just feels like every time people leave them, they don't even. Like it's all just the most hollow support. Like I've seen people where they'll subscribe to you and they'll leave like one comment. Maybe they respond to like two videos, some single digit number of videos, and then they just vanish. It's like this is stupid. You're not benefiting anybody. So I said this site is just it likes to trick you. It likes to arouse you with the idea that things are going to get better and you're going to start getting massive on here, but don't believe it. My favorite thing is like I always imagine a retort of like you're too negative. No, I'm just looking at a pattern. I'm looking at a very obvious pattern that anyone with two eyes could see, which is that a lot of times you'll have some video that does really good, and besides that, everything else is just sort of, whatever. People act like it really makes a difference. It's so sad. Mm. That's always the worst part about the lack of engagement. Sometimes you start to wonder if like I've had so many times where I'll start a stream and because no one says anything, I'm like, oh, did the stream glitch or did it not get put up or what happened? Just I start thinking that something is wrong with my technology versus the fact that people just aren't there, like no one's there. Uh, what's another example? I guess I could also say you could also make the same comments about. I've posted videos where like no one says anything or like watches it or well maybe there'll be like a view or two, but just that also will have me thinking, oh man, did I slip up on the upload? Did it not go through? So there are a lot of instances where stuff like that happens, where you think something's one way and then it turns out to be completely different, or people just don't engage with it, and it like it does a decent job at like tricking you into thinking that like you messed up or you didn't even upload the thing. It's just that's how bare minimum the engagement is, where there's just no one to remind you like, hey, this is a public thing. There were these two guys on that Gen Z video that were arguing with each other, and it was it really, I guess if it had been a slower news week, I would have considered doing a video on it where I just read their comments, comments on how derailed everything became. But I just decided not to. I was like, you know what? People write weird stuff in my comment section all the time. Uh, as long as they're not being insulting towards me, I'm not going to make fun of them, even if I do think the back and forth was stupid. I don't know. I feel like my tolerance for something like that would be better if it were people I actually saw on my stuff before. But it's like, here's another two guys that can leave 50 comments on one video, but they can't leave two on two separate videos. Yay! Terrific. Mm. This guy was asking me about Avatar. Not the one I actually like, the Last Airbender, but rather the blue people. And just like, why ask me about a movie that I've shown no interest in seeing or anything like that? The only thing that stood out about Avatar is first one came out when I was a kid, and the second one people kept saying was coming out, and I kept saying, yeah, sure, eventually it'll premiere, and eventually did come out, but just that giant gap is what I remember most of all, like just the amount of time it took to even get that sequel in the first place. Mm. Let me see what's in the news today. Seems like the same old crap. I keep forgetting we're getting closer to that first GOP debate. It's taken so long. Like just I don't know. Just this cycle has felt like a bunch of people lashing out at each other from I guess different parts of America, and I have to keep reminding myself that they're all like in the race for the same thing, and it's not just four or five people because at this point we only see a few of them polling beyond like 2%. So it'll be interesting when we finally see most of them at the debate. Yeah, the Santos has been real fun to watch implode. I don't know. I really think if he got in earlier, probably back in February or March, like I thought he originally would, he'd be doing better. But when you sit here and you kind of tip around, maybe I'll get in, or let me see how the legislative session goes. I think he doomed himself. I think it's impossible for him to recover, but I think it's an uphill battle. And he's just another example of these people that get hyped up to run for something, and then when they actually run, it's like the most lackluster, dull, boring, uh, whatever type campaign. Yeah, he's a really aggravating candidate. That's all I can say. He's disappointing. He is he's someone who I don't think really has a vision. Like if you asked him why he's running, he probably wouldn't be able to tell you. At least anything that's substantive. I'm trying to defeat woke. Just all types of little goofy stuff like that aside. I just don't think he's a very serious contender. We talked about before. You can't run for a position and not be willing to criticize the person who is, you know, at the top of the polling. You have to when you run for something, you have to act as if it is your last campaign. If you don't win this, the city or the district or the state or the just if you're running for president, the American people, they're doomed. If you don't get in there, that's it. You have to blow out all the stops. You got to engage. Like they always talk about, oh, the blackout, right? Or these different candidates. The media doesn't talk about. Well, to hell with the media. If you live in just in general, if I'm trying to represent a district or I'm trying to represent, if I'm running for governor, example, I would go out there and campaign. You get like what, a year to go and knock on all these doors. I would do that. The media can't stop like, yeah, the media can like not mention you, not report on you, whatever. But a lot of people don't even watch the news anyway. If you go directly to them and present to them the idea that you're running for something and you want them to register to vote, and here's why you think you'd be better than the person that's currently there, and at least you're actually trying, and the other person's sitting in their ivory tower, I think that can make a difference. Oh man. That's the thing I'd be most excited about is seeing how many people you could get to vote who've never voted before. That's always the part that fascinates me the most. Like how many people, they're not against voting. Like they don't think it's this useless, stupid thing we shouldn't even have. But how many people just don't care? Like they've never really been excited about any candidates. They've never felt as if any of it has any factor in their day to day existence. I'd really be interested in seeing just how many people an insurgent candidate who's like actively trying to speak to voters and appear before them and talk to them, like how many people that person could get to register. I'd be very interested in seeing what that would look like, because a lot of these House races and Senate races and governor races, they have low voter turnout. A lot of people just don't want to participate in them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, it's been a really okay day so far. I'm just thinking about how I didn't have to go and jump in the car and drive down the street. It's nice. Even though I am kind of tired, I'm just glad I didn't have to do that. So it's a nice change of pace. If I remember correctly, I think the last stream that I did here was they took all my buttons. I'm not entirely sure. Let me fact check that. Oh no, it was the unappreciated video editor. I mean wiki editor rather. Where I was talking about WikiPiss, which by the way I saw them yesterday. I went on there yesterday and I saw where they're asking people to donate again. I just feel like telling them just give it up. Like if you have that many people that read your stupid site and they can't be bothered to give $1, maybe there's something wrong with your site in a way that the people who are in charge treat others that go on there and attempt to assist their ungrateful behinds. Yeah, doing a documentary is. I always think about all those major networks. They used to do them like the History Channel, and how they'd have one person who narrates it. They have probably a series of researchers who go out and get the information, and then somebody that I guess types it all out, or it could be the same group of people. I was like, man, when I do one of these, I have to read all of some book or read all of something, and then, you know, write down whatever it is in my own words. Then also uh, hope that it works or that people like it. Sometimes you just can't win. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to do that many of these, so I'm fine with the amount of effort that's because I used to have this real ambition of just doing like I'd have a whole list of subjects. Like, oh, I want one on that person, on that person, on that person. But honestly, just kind of like factoring in how hard it is to even get people to watch stuff. I'm fine with just doing like maybe two, three more people, and then that's it forever. Unless I'm able to, because in the hypothetical where I was a bigger channel, which I don't, I've said before, I don't think will ever happen. I would be able to at least get people to either do one or the two. Either I do the research part and then they edit it all together right after you record your stuff, and then they can edit it for you, or they do the research and then I edit it. One or the other. I have to admit that would certainly make this a lot faster. So I'm just sitting there thinking, like, when I do part one, which I still only have about maybe 7 or 8 pages of, and there's probably going to be at a minimum like 15 probably, and even that might not be enough. That might still it might need to be pushed to 20 for all I know. Um, but I was just thinking, if I do part one, how long is it going to take to do part two, and then three, and then four, and then that still is not even covering the presidency, which is the part that most people are interested in, of course. Um, so that's what's got me kind of worried. Yeah, it's been a really crazy time just reading this stuff, and I can say when you have an agenda like that, where there's because I always like I've read plenty of stuff just for the sake of reading it. Um, but I have to admit, when I know there is a purpose, like a dual purpose of, hey, I also want to make something with the material from this, I think it's also, it makes me zero in because I've said before, sometimes it can be hard to just sit down and read a book. Like I have all these other things I can do, so it can be difficult to just sit and stare at something for a protracted amount of time. But um, knowing what I want to do with the information here is what's making me just kind of sit down and go over it and read through it piece by piece, page by page. I'm still laughing at my friend that was asking me about how long it takes me to read a whole book and how I could probably read like 100 pages in a day. And I said, Like sometimes with books, the font size makes it take longer where there's more text on a given page than like another book, and that can increase the amount of time it takes. But then it's like this is coming. The guy asking me if I can read 100 pages in a day literally prides himself on the fact that he doesn't read. So how are you going to sit here and try to like assign an arbitrary timetable of when I can expect to finish reading something when you yourself don't read? You don't read at all. I just think that's really funny. It's like, hey, I don't read at all, but let me ask you how long it takes you to finish reading something. Yeah, Robert Dallek is such a good author. I mean, like I still haven't read that much of Caro's series. I read a little bit of the first volume, but Dallek so far has been really good in terms of his descriptions and the research that's been gathered here. I can appreciate. I really the way that stuff is described. Sometimes I really feel like I'm being transported back, 70, 80 years ago. Yeah, this is very interesting. It's cool to see you back inside when you feel more comfortable. Yeah, it's nice because I didn't have to get up and drive over there. It doesn't take that long to get over there, but it's just nice to wake up and then just turn the computer on and start instead of having to get the bag together and grab this and grab that and make sure. I actually had one time where I locked the door like while leaving and I left the computer inside. Although the main con will come from being able to see any attractive chicks walking by or something. Well, hey, there's always Saturday. Saturday is most likely going to be the same scenario where there's someone here who's sleeping all morning. So we'll be able to see them. They'll be back. Also, I was going to tell you that I was thinking of making a video about being alone and how a lot of times with the digital era you can feasibly live somewhere with multiple people who just don't speak to you at all. Like they just sit on these devices all morning, all afternoon, all night. Um, they might say one or two words to you throughout the day about, "Hey, do you want something to eat?" or "Can you give me something to eat?" or "Did this happen? Did that happen?" And then that's it. Like the rest of the day is just them staring at their device from dusk till dawn. And I was talking about how a lot of times when this happens, you try to like find more meaningful interactions with people on the internet, but because of the almost like brain rotted nature of chicks, a lot of times when you speak to one of them, it just goes nowhere. Usually because they don't want it to. They do things that are completely out of left field that when you read it and you just think about it, it makes no sense, and you really will scramble your brain trying to put logic into the actions of a lot of these chicks, especially the ones on the computer. I'll certainly be interested in seeing that if you decide to make that video. Yeah, originally I was going to make a video about how disgusting women on Twitter are, Because I've had situations where two of them, I kid you not, I will show, and I have the still have the what do you call it, DMs. You can have a pleasant conversation with them. You could just say hi. You're not hitting on them. You're not saying anything that could remotely be interpreted as, I'm talking about. There's nothing there that's inappropriate, and they will block you. Um, and the first time that happened, I'll never forget. It was Christmas of last year, just completely out of nowhere. Then the next time was about 2 or 3 weeks ago with someone I barely spoke to. I just answered one of their questions, and they responded with that, with doing that. And the third time was as recently as a few days ago, and the third time was by the same person who did it back during Christmas. So I basically just, all right, well, this is now a joke of itself. I'm not even like, I was really upset the first time, but the second time it was like, yeah, I'm not. You guys are just not serious about anything. Oh, just some weird people. Yeah, I've experienced scenarios similar as this myself. It is so weird. Like, I swear to you, you could have someone who you're talking to and they say they like speaking to you, they enjoy interacting with you, etc., all that mushy stuff. And then just, and it gets even crazier because, like, when I had that one broad on Insta Garbage do that, I said, okay, you know what? As much as I don't agree with it, I could still say, well, I did basically give her the ultimatum of, hey, are we going to speak or not? Because I just think this is a waste of time. Um, Even if I didn't think it was like a nasty message, it was me just trying to figure out where I stood with her. But a lot of these other ones, you don't even have, you could really like find yourself walking on eggshells with, and they'll still just pull the rug from under you. I try not to let it get to me though. Oh no, listen, after a few days ago with the one that did it, and like again, if I show the stuff that she was writing, it just shows that it's like they have, basically at this point, I'm just convinced a lot of them have dual personalities. They're bipolar. Like they like you on Monday, they hate you on Tuesday. So I'm not letting this last instance basically turned what they've been doing into a joke. Which is why I said I kind of debated whether I want to include that in a video about like what it means to be alone, because that would be a serious topic. And the stuff with these chicks online, I think I've explained to you before, I don't really take seriously. They're kind of a joke to me. They're not really a group I would call worth being upset over. They're just whatever. So the tones would clash with each other if you have a serious topic, but then a group of people that are like a big gag. Dude, you wouldn't believe me if I told you I had a woman who said, I will not block you. I did the last time because I was mad at everybody. And then, like, they block you the day after saying that or hours after saying that. And they do it after they've, like, started revealing all this personal stuff about themselves, which, I'm not going to share in the video or anything, but just like, you would think you would only take the time to start revealing those things to someone that you apparently want to talk to. Like, you get where it's really counterintuitive to say, here's this person that I'm trying to get to know. And so I'm going to tell them stuff about myself, ask them stuff about themselves. And then after like an hour, I'll block them and I'll go on. It's like, what's the point of that? Even if they say they like speaking to you, enjoy having long conversation with you, the next day they will not speak to you, even when you see them online. That's what the other one's been doing. The one that, her she's being harassed by her ex, or just outright block you abruptly. Well, I'll tell you, my friend was trying to advise me to block the one that's been ignoring me. I said, why would I block someone who's not bothering me? Like, I told him if he ever gave a piece of advice that was that lousy again, I'd block him in real life. And blocking in real life is 10 times worse than this computer stuff, because when you can't speak to somebody and they drive right past you and you get ignored, you turn into a pariah. That person basically decides you're not worthy of their air. So I told him the next time he gives some advice that harebrained, that illogical, he's getting blocked in real life. And it won't be abrupt. He'll know exactly what it was over. You want to say something insane, there's got to be a penalty. They really do remind me of my recruiter for that service I was part of, or I guess that agency where she said you could be hired one day and fired the next. I've gotten so many messages / conversations that have ended like that on Discord. Oh yeah, I had a person. I was so mad. I made a video about it that was in a server with me and this one guy I used to talk to, and I'm not kidding. I literally said like hi to them, and I think something else like how are you doing or do you want to speak, and then they said that I sounded that I was like suspicious or whatever. And then they said the reason that they told the guy when he confronted them that the reason they blocked me was because they didn't like my avatar or my username. And I'm like, well, hell, nobody on that site uses a picture of themselves. Like, so what if I want to use a picture of a Congress member? Like they get to take pictures of cartoon characters and nobody has a problem with that. Dating back 2 or so years ago, it's crazy. Oh, what? That's insane. I swear, I literally just tried to say hi to that person and they blocked me. And then when they got confronted by the guy running the server, they were like, "Oh, I didn't like his username or his avatar." I'm like, what about like I swear, I've never been against speaking to somebody because of their username. Most people online, at least that use, again, we're not talking about like Facebook, right? Most people online, I think it's reasonable to say either don't use their real name or they don't use their actual image. Well, that's what I'm saying. The guy himself is was using some. I think I remember it wasn't an actual person. It was like a cartoon or some other type of icon, and it wasn't his real name either. So that's why I say you just have to get to a point where you just don't take it seriously. You just have to say the people on these sites are not actually acting like human beings. So when they do weird stuff like that, you just go, okay, whatever. This is just how it is. That's so stupid. I agree. That's why I made a video because I couldn't believe that even happened. Like I remember one of the first Discord controversies I ever had was when I was in this server and I was like DMing people just trying to speak because I always preferred one-on-one interactions to being in some giant group of like 10, 15 people. It's just more personal, and I feel people are more comfortable when I just feel more comfortable when it's just two people or three or whatever. And I was sitting back and I was thinking to myself, it's crazy that people can really get mad at you over trying to greet them. Like you don't even have to say anything nasty. So for example, this woman on Twitter was saying that men send her pictures of their uh, you know, private area, right? And I was saying I think that's really nasty, and I don't dispute that she's telling the truth because I used to have this one person I would talk to that had the same thing happen on Reddit. But it's like you don't even have to do anything like that. You can just send someone a message saying hello or how are you, and they react in the most hostile and disturbed ways. It's crazy. I don't like your avatar or your username. And by the way, just so you know, that was bogus. The same moderator of that server told me that the guy blocked somebody else that tried to say hi to him. So That was just his dumb excuse. But he in general he just is apoplectic to speaking to people, which to me just seems kind of counterintuitive because it's like, why be on social media if you're not going to interact with anyone? Like, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? I'm gonna sit in this server that has like 50 people in here and only talk to maybe two of them. And if any of the other ones reach out to me, I'm gonna make sure they can't say anything else to me. I remember there was this one chick that I think I how long did I speak to her? Maybe for like 2 or 3 months. And out of nowhere she just stopped responding to me, and then I messaged her again. She was like, I need some space, and maybe you should only message me like once a week. And I'm like, bimbo, if you have a problem talking to me regularly or recurringly, why don't we just stop it all together? I'm not about to sit here and purposely act like you don't exist for 7 days and then try to. And it's so I just ended it. I was like, this is stupid. Yes, something as simple as a greeting can be misconstrued to give you a hostile response. And oh, forget people like that, damn weird. Forget people like her, damn weird people. But you get where that's crazy, where you have someone that you apparently like speaking to, but you don't want to talk to them as much. So you're going to put up this like barrier where, because remember, she doesn't have to speak to me any more than she wants to. She could just not respond if I send her something. So you're gonna put up this barrier where for a week, I'm supposed to pretend that I'm not going out of my way to say nothing to you. Oh, Jem, you finally reappeared. You'll never guess what book I've been reading and researching from. I think part one could be ready as early as this upcoming weekend, and as late as the weekend after that. I'd be really shocked if it takes until September for part one to come out. I think at the speed I'm going at, it'll be there. Now I know you're not going to watch the video, and if you do, you're not going to leave a comment because you don't like when I get engagement. So we already know. We've already foreseen what your plans are. Oh, you put up a new video that you researched for several weeks. Oh man, sorry, I've been watching Barbie. I couldn't be bothered to type anything. You know how it is. No, I know once it comes out on digital, you're not even you're gonna retire from coming to my streams after that when you can just play it all day. You don't have to leave your house. You just go on Apple TV and just click it, and it it starts playing again. I was so close to doing a video on that Pence gas campaign ad because I just can't believe that a grown man that's like over 60 years old didn't know how to pump gas. But yeah, I'm definitely willing to watch that video you have in the works on being alone. Yeah, but Jem, it's not even about being a tool. It's just like the idea that you're going to make a video complaining about the high cost of gas, but then when you make the video, you don't click the grade and you don't pump it. So like we're hearing click, click, click the entire time you're speaking. That was a L. That's a L ad. He's been rich his whole life. Well, after the insurrection happened, apparently he was homeless, but like not in the sense of, oh, he has nowhere to go. He was like he hadn't owned a house since being elected governor, So he was just staying in the different houses of various politicians from his home state. It was really weird. It's like I know I was the second a heartbeat away from the most powerful office in the world a few years ago, but now I don't have anywhere to stay. So can I stay at your house? I just think that's really funny to go from being arguably the vice presidency really isn't powerful at all, but like to go from being a heartbeat away from the most powerful position to being homeless like in the span of a few weeks. Corporation report must have it for profit. No, I what it is that he just he just stayed in the governor's mansion and then got picked to be the VP for Trump's ticket and they won, and then for the last 8 or 9 years just did not own a residence, which is why I said it was very funny to just imagine him going to like the different Indiana politicians. Hey, can I stay here for a little bit? Well, he only got picked because he was considered to not outshine Trump. That's the only reason. Even though looking back, I really wish he had picked. Well, I'm not going to say Rice because then people would get mad. He did zero. No, that ad was a L. That was one of I even had my friend when we were talking about YouTube and just how hard it is to get views on stuff. He had the nerve to say it depends on the topics too, because you talk about politics. Like, dude, do you really believe that nobody watches the news? Like, go on YouTube one of these days, Jem, and type in Fox News or CBS or CNN. They all have 1 million plus subs, if not more. And I told him like I told him that's an L. Like when you've convinced yourself that just because you don't watch something that there's not an audience for it, that's an L. News channels, old legacy news are some of the most popular channels on YouTube. Well, apparently he was going to pick, or at least he considered picking, what's her name from Iowa, Ernst. But her husband was like, "You better not take that job. I don't want you to take that job." So I would have, I definitely would have preferred he pick her to Pence because I think if she had left the Senate, uh, it would have been easier to flip that seat to blue. But what you gonna do? Although I have to admit, she has one of the much more less appealing voices out of any member of Congress. I am standing up for the rights of Iowa. I just it's headache inducing. That was always the one compliment I would give to Manchin. Like, yeah, he's a joke and he's a liar. But he actually has a pretty soothing voice. Like I have to admit, I can listen to him talk, even if it's a bunch of nonsense for hours on end with her. She just, oh my god, she has a channel. I don't know how anybody subscribed to that thing. At least she can speak. Dude, we're gonna be hearing that voice for the next 20 or 30 years if the Democrats don't get their stuff together. Like she's gonna be Grassley 2.0 where they just stay in the Senate forever. Dude, Feinstein is like the chief example of elder abuse where you have this old lady who doesn't know where she is, when she votes, it's probably after being coached by someone who has some mental faculties. And people think it, at least with McConnell, he to me seems more stable than like Pelosi struggles to even speak. If you ever like listen to her talk, she has a difficult time, we know it's like an age thing because if you watch clips of her from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, she's perfectly fine. But McConnell, at the very least, can still talk, can still move around without any wheelchair or any of the other impairments. He's a very as far as outward appearances, he appears to be very healthy. Someone has to move her hand to vote. Man, I think we pissed off Megumi. I don't think we're going to see him for the rest of the stream. He was he's going back on Twitter to talk to some of these women that'll block you for saying hi to him. Don't worry, you'll never be blocked on my stream unless you insult me. These women remind me of Supreme Court Justice Ruth. I thought you loved Ruth. I thought Ginsburg was your favorite justice ever. Please retire. Well, if you want an example of someone who I think there was a justification for them dying in office, I probably would say Ted Kennedy, because while he did get sick with the whole, brain cancer, he was still alert enough to move around, right? And go to work until the last 7-8 months of his life. And you know what I'm saying? It's different because he wasn't in losing any mental faculties. I truly believe that no matter what way you spin it, he was going to stay on that Senate seat forever. Like, because there's actually an old article from I think it was 2003 or 4 where he was talking about how, like, even if he retired at the end of a 10th term, he still would have been younger than than like Thurman, for example. Same thing with McCain. McCain was good all the way up until his was it to the final year of his life. He was still showing up to work. So I said, man, these diseases, they just it's always disturbing to me seeing somebody on live TV. Oh yes, Storm. Oh, you mean like Storm from X-Men? I'm not talking about Storm. I'm talking about Strom. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying that comparatively speaking to someone like Feinstein, he was actually mentally astute for the entire time he was in office, even after getting his last illness. I mean, how could you forget Strom? Between his very unique name and running for president in 1948 and actually winning several states. Uh, and really, he is the reason that South Carolina is red. Because, a lot of people joke about, oh, Goldwater got smashed by LBJ, huh? But 64 was the year that Thurman switched over to being a Republican. And South Carolina, ever since that election, has voted for every single Republican presidential candidate in every presidential election since then, except in 76. So he had a big impact on on the state of affairs. Yeah, it's what was the ratio? It was like 44-6 between Johnson and Goldwater. But I'm telling you, the reason Johnson did not win South Carolina is because of Thurman. Every time you mention Vietnam, I'm just thinking about how, like, God, if I really just use these two books, I got volume 1 over there, volume 2 right here. That this you're looking at. I'm not even joking, like 7 or 8 or 9 videos. Oh my God. I really hope that Jem watches them. That's all I can say. And you think I'm kidding? I wouldn't do this for very many historical figures. Like, I'm not joking about that at all. All this research, all this reading, all this editing. So you're getting the whole you're getting the whole shebang with him. I already said before, one of the biggest reasons I even want to do this is because I like the idea of having all information in one place. Like, realistically, I don't have to. I'm not saying I'm doing this like to replace a book or anything, but I like the idea of someone reading from multiple sources and putting all of it together in their own little thing, and then they can refer back to it. And what happened to Megumi? He just vanished. I hope he reappears. I'll be very disappointed if he doesn't show up again. This will be the worst morning. I was gonna say it'll be the worst morning of the year, but I remember last Monday. Like, well, never mind. Last Monday was horrible. I thought I was in some kind of doomsday nightmare scenario. Dude, next year is going to be so wacky because it's the centennial for both Carter and Bush 41, and I'm very sentimental about anniversaries, so I might try to. Was that the stream you said you couldn't sleep? Yeah, because what I think I mentioned, I tried to go back, to get some rest, and then right after I get back, go and help me with this and pick this up from over here, and then I pick the thing up and then show up late to the other thing, and the person gets mad at me even though didn't want to go do the first thing and made me late to the second thing. Making up for missing like 3 weeks. It is what it is, man. I'm not about to sit here and fight anybody over they don't show up to every stream or whatever. I get it. Like, it happens. It is what it. Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Like I said, the Johnson documentary part 1 at a minimum is going to take 2 more weeks. I should have the thing finished at some point before the end of the month. But no, that was the worst Monday of the whole year. I was tired. I just wanted to come back and rest, and these damn side quests. And it's like they tell you to go and pick this thing up at the rush hour, like right when all these people are outside trying to get something too. Like it's to make it even take even longer. It was awful. Oh, you probably don't even remember Megumi, the woman that was at that one job I had where I said, "Hey, I really enjoy our conversations. I wish we could speak outside of being at the job so that we could actually have like a longer discussion." And I sent her a message. I'm like, "Hey, so what are your hobbies?" "Oh, I'm traveling over the Christmas break with my partner." I'm like, after that, I didn't send anything else. Like, yeah, there's the problem with chicks right there in like two sentences. Stop saying side quest. It's a hilarious. I mean, what else do you call it? Your main objective is to go and help this person that get up and do this thing at their place. But before you can do that, you have to run the side quest of picking up more of something you already have. So what else would you term it as? There's a main objective, and then there's a whole bunch of little stuff in between. I'll share it once finished. I know a lot of LBJ fans. Great. I tell you, the way this is going to go is I'm going to split it, all the pre-presidency stuff, in the 4 parts, 4 videos, all roughly 20 or 30 minutes in length. I would assume. Again, I have to like sit back and record the stuff, and we'll see how long the material altogether is. Where's the damn table of contents? Give me a second, man. I'm looking through here. Oh, I feel so ignorant. Where is it? Okay, here it is. So part 1 is going to end with him being elected congressman. And then part 2 is going to be from 37 to 48, from when he was congressman to when he first becomes senator. That has a lot of stuff to do with FDR because that overlaps with most of FDR's term as president. Part 3 will be when he was senator, at least half of that time. And then, that's kind of like going into the Eisenhower era and McCarthyism and all the rest of that. And then part 4 will be the second half of his tenure as senator. So it'll be split across 4 parts. And then after they're all done, I'll combine them. And then we can just call that part 1, like the actual part 1. And then part 2 is the presidency. And then part 1 altogether, when we get the combined version, is probably going to be like at least an hour. And that's not even counting the parts where I'll actually like be on screen describing stuff with more detail or anything I find in the meantime. Because like I said, I still haven't read Caro's 4-volume series. Yeah, I definitely remember that insane chick. I would have done the same thing if she told me that too. And it's so lame because I'm telling you, some of these chicks you really very well may enjoy speaking to. You might have a good dialogue with, and they will ruin it. Like those bastards will just destroy it, man. I'm not even kidding. Like it's tragic just how you can have people who you genuinely want to have a relationship with, not even romantic, right? Just someone to talk to, speak to. How are you doing? Oh, you like this as well? Oh, yeah, cool. And all these chicks know how to do is destroy it. It is like it's really tragic. I'm not even saying to be funny. It's just sad that they can't ever move beyond thinking everyone wants to be their boyfriend and having a whole bipolar thing of I like him today and I don't like him tomorrow, and I like him today and I don't like him tomorrow. It's sad. Dude, I swear there have been so many chicks you'll talk to and like, oh, this is kind of fun. I'm having a nice time. Yeah, let's you wanna keep this going? Well, I don't really know you that well. Oh my god. Such a lousy group, man. Dude, I swear when you ask to just talk to them, they act like you're asking for their hand in matrimony. It's so insane. Like I tell you, chicks are so interesting as a group because you have the like really you have like the nasty ones, right? That do all the little dirty stuff with these guys. And it's like if you try to have a dialogue with them, they act as if you're like doing something dirty, like the act of just speaking to you is this extremely adulterous thing, you know? Even if your conversations are entirely platonic, like I'll show you screenshots of all the interactions with the one that is ignoring me on Insta garbage, the two that blocked me on Twitter. Nothing romantic about any of this, and they still act this way. I didn't insult anyone, didn't call anybody out of their name. Doesn't matter. It just goes to show how much you really cannot relax or let your guard down with any of this. Remember what I told you? When you find some new person, new chick, whatever, and you speak to her, have a good dialogue, it's like a window is being opened, right? You're like, oh man, this could this finally be someone that I actually enjoy talking to that likes talking to me back? Or are we actually going to see something that's good here? And then guess what? Right as you're opening that window, letting your guard down a little bit, knife right to the stomach every time. The one that's been doing the whole ignore me thing on Insta garbage, that one shocked me because it really was out of nowhere. You sit here for hours talking to someone, and then they just completely ignore you after that. Dialogue, they don't know the meaning of the word. I mean, hey, a lot of people get college degrees and they don't know basic things. Now, Megumi, I just wanted to ask you this. I know you're not into this type of stuff, but I really want to get your opinion on this. Imagine what I would look like if there was a historical figure who created a healthcare system that automatically, when I get into my 60s and 40 years, I'm going to be put on it, right? I'm going to automatically inherit this system and then have health coverage for the rest of my life, starting in my 60s because of this person and of this program rather, and I don't even know who signed it in the law, like who was responsible for it. Doesn't that make me look like an ignorant bastard? I don't know the person who directly made a program that I am going to inherit and benefit off uh, in a couple of decades or in several decades. Dude, some of the most important programs and like the fact that there are people who don't know who made them is, like in America is really disturbing. Like if you ever wanted more proof that you're in a country of idiots, that is like the textbook first thing that comes to mind. I mean, like stuff that you're going to benefit from and you don't even know who made it. Well, Megumi, that's why I get so frustrated with my friend not knowing who Johnson is. Like we talked about the mundane existence, right? The idea that you just know stuff that you need to know if you want to get a job or whatever, like basic survival thing. But like, look at me. Imagine if every job you get, you have to keep doing this. Now, of course, you live in the UK, so you have single payer, right? But imagine if you live in America and from the time you first get into working for these jobs all the way up until you're in your 60s, you're going to have to keep going to these different employers, whatever kind of health coverage they have. But then when you get in your 60s, you now have Medicare and Medicaid, and you have coverage automatically for the rest of your life. And imagine you really didn't know who made that program, who made it that way. I hope you understand before the 60s, if you were older and you didn't have health coverage, you better hope that your kids or somebody else pays for your medical bills. Otherwise, you're dead. But that's why it drives me nuts that one of the most important programs in the last 70 or 80 years period, in the last century, the person who made it and the person who's going to eventually get on it do not like intersect as, hey, the person who's going to inherit this thing knows who made it and they're glad they made it, etc. It's really sad. And Megumi, you probably aren't even familiar. Like, I know you have probably like some basic understanding of the civil rights movement, but and Jem can testify to this. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act did a lot to curb down on some of the more discriminatory measures against African Americans. Like, we've been able to vote since Reconstruction, but there were different things done in the South, like the grandfather clause, where if your grandpa couldn't vote, then you couldn't vote. That limited the ability of blacks to vote. So the Voting Rights Act is considered basically the true beginning of when blacks could vote without any, facing those same type of barriers that had plagued us for the last century. So blacks in America really have only had the guaranteed right to vote for the last 70 years, 60, 50 years, right? And here's this guy who's black, who can vote, and he doesn't even know who was in office when that major piece of legislation was signed. That's pathetic. I don't care who gets mad. I don't care who gets upset. That's pathetic. Well, listen, Vietnam is, I just want you to understand something. I can respect the people that talk trash about him because at least they know who he is. And a lot of conservatives just throw away all the civil rights stuff by saying this is what caused people to not have families and, all the little garbage, right? But at least they know who he is. This guy wouldn't even know what he might recognize the country of Vietnam, maybe might vaguely know there was a war. But if you asked him, hey, when did it take place? Who was president during it? So, just more ignorance. Megumi, I'm telling you, American history is so frustrating because there are so many people that did important things. And because our educational system is just so crap, it ends up being the where, unless you basically have to go out and look for it to find out what it is. And then the people who know it, like myself, feel very frustrated with people who don't know it, because what ends up happening, like, you could always say, oh, well, just go out and teach people, right? A lot of people that you might try to teach something to just will not retain it. So, for example, I could easily, I think I told the story of how I asked my friend if he could remember, if he could at least try to remember the first black person that ran for president, actually, like, came close to winning and picked up multiple states, which was a feat that people didn't even think was possible back in the 80s with Jesse Jackson. He was like, maybe. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm done with you. I'm never going to try to inform you of any major, either historical event, current event. I'm through. We're finished. But you get where that's annoying, right? Like, why should I bother explaining something to a person who, one, is not going to retain it, and two, I mean, if they wanted to know, they could learn this stuff just as easily as I did. I'm just asking. I tell you, the best example, Megumi, is when he was like, I thought the US had 1 billion people. I was like, what gave you that impression? Because remember, you can go on Google and it'll tell you. And like I said, oh, I wonder how many people live in the UK. I don't have to ask Megumi. I can just go on Google and it said like 60 million, 60 plus million. Even if it is a person who represents who they are and made a huge impact in US history, they decide to be ignorant about it. And they do decide. It's not like a thing of they try to go, oh, in school they didn't teach me. In school they didn't teach me about him either. But guess what? I still went, and actually, no, that's not true, because they did talk about Johnson Durr, because 2014, it's like around when I was in high school, is when we had the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, and the year after that we had the 50th anniversary of the vote. So you get where it was like, the timely anniversaries. Dude, when he said 1 billion, I almost fell on the floor laughing. Like, it was so insane. I mean, I just want you to understand, Megumi. It would be like if I asked you, what's 2 times 10? And like, sometimes kids might go because it's 20, but like sometimes kids might go, okay, maybe it's 25. You get wrong by a little bit, right? It would be like if you said, oh, 2 times 10 is 60 or 65. It's like you're off by this giant margin. Like you're not even a little bit wrong. John Jay is the Supreme Court justice, right? I've heard that name before. Let me make sure. I'm not gonna like try to, I'm gonna use the internet. That's the great part about these computers. You can just, if you don't know something, type it in, and there you go. I want to make sure I have this right, so Megumi doesn't call me ignorant. Yeah, yeah. I remember because I there was a documentary I watched it where they mentioned Chief Justice John J. All right, good. I got a little nervous for a second. Like, oh, do you get me? Jim's like, I'm unsubbing. He didn't know who John Jay was. Like, no, I remembered the name. I just had to make sure I got the position correct. I knew it was someone in the earlier part of America, like one of the founding father era type political figures, because they chose not to retain information. They do. And I hope you understand, like, if you sit here and you tell me something about UK history, maybe I don't retain all of it, depending on how much of it is, but I'll still attempt to remember the core aspects of what you said to me. When you say to someone after they ask, "Hey, can you try to remember this?" Maybe you are telling that person in a subtle way, "I'm not committed to at least learning this one aspect of history, not some giant course where you go over every damn thing ever happened to man, but this one person, this one recent historical figure. Jackson is still alive. He just announced about a month or two ago that he's going to step down as the head of Operation Rainbow Push. But even this one historical figure, who is a contemporary figure as well, he's like, no, I'm not committed to learning that. So I said, all right, well, I'm not going to try to get you to remember anything from this point forward. When you say abolitionist, I start thinking of John Brown. I don't know if you remember him from like the lead up to the Civil War, where he was one of those radical abolitionists that was like accused by a lot of the Southerners of being a terrorist for the tactics he used. Megumi, I'm not even trying to be funny. And like I said, I understand you're from the UK. Even though, like I said, I'm very much inclined to learning about the UK because it's a very important country. Um, but I'm just trying to get you to understand the man I'm talking about, the man I'm thinking of doing this big documentary on, is easily one of the most consequential Americans of the 20th century in terms of the laws that passed under his tenure, the fact that many of them had no chance of passing if he were not there. um it's really sad that there are not even just kids, but like adults who've gone to college who have degrees that don't know who that is. Like, you have to be one of the most ignorant bastards on the planet, in the country, to just have, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's why when I swear to you, fame is extremely subjective, because you can have people who are so important as to have had movies made about them, multiple books written about them, documentaries about them, statues of them, buildings named after them, and there will still be some ignorant bastard who doesn't know who they are. They would probably, well, you know what? I made that point to them because this is the same person like, I don't care about actors. I care about the story. It's like, but they're the ones that are in the damn story you're talking about. They make the story come to life. Uh, and I said, like, so you, and I what I did, I got him. I was like, oh, you know, that artist, that artist, that artist. And it's like, so you know all these artists who you don't even listen to, but then you don't know the actors that are in multiple shows and movies that you say you like. And that's not crazy. That's not weird. That's not a contradiction. He just say, I don't know all the singers. Like, no, you know all of them, because when I start naming rappers that aren't even considered mainstream, people that, you know, I mean, they could put up a song today and it wouldn't even get a million views, which is like a prerequisite of those like big rappers. He knows who they are. And again, a lot of times he doesn't even listen to their music. But that's why I said it's just weird, you know? I'm telling you, man, I'm so embarrassed. It's really sad because, like I said, the Voting Rights Act is truly when blacks could start to vote all across America without any of that uh southern, and you know, to an extent, well, yeah, mostly in the South, yeah, any of that southern nonsense where they tried to go, oh, your grandpa couldn't vote, or you registered too late, or you don't have the right ID. That got rid of most of that stuff, and it's like you really don't know who did that. Just pathetic, man. And like I said, dude, I tried so hard to be patient. I tried so hard to, but I just got tired of explaining the same thing over to the same two, three adults that they don't retain anything. I've had the same bastard ask me, who's LBJ, like 3 times in the last 4 years. And I'm done with it. I'm not explaining this anymore. Look it up yourself if you're so interested. Because, like I said, what's the point of teaching someone something if they're not going to retain it? That's like that's like me saying, "Hey, let me just waste my breath." Oh, I know the North was, yeah. I mean, you don't have to convince me. If you read a lot of the materials for, I don't know what's a good example. Well, I guess that's not in the North, but I mean, you look at Massachusetts. That was all white. That still is all white, basically. They just weren't as openly, you know, antagonistic as the South was. I'm just saying that the Voting Rights Act really did a lot to curb much of that oppression, and it's just disappointing that people are the way they are. It really is. Dude, hey, Megumi, I hope you're not disturbed by this, but just imagine in like 10 years, you're gonna have people who are like, who was the ruler before King Charles? And you know what it is? It's not because, oh, this person passed away, so now we don't know who they are. No, it's because they don't put any stock into keeping someone's you know, memory alive. Like they don't talk about a person, they don't discuss them with their kids. Blacks are in the urban centers. I agree with you. I'm just saying the 60s were a really important time period. I think that was one of the most consequential decades in American history, because many of the same ideas and beliefs that started or really got like popularized then are still around now. it's scary that it's only been six. Let me let me flip this around a little bit. I got the okay. It's scary. It's only been 60 years. It really is because, like I said, I have living relatives that remember the South in the 50s and early 60s, and even to an extent the 40s as well. They remember, uh, whites only, blacks, signs and whatnot, and the Klan. And I mean, it's this stuff is not, and that's what disturbs me. This stuff is really not that far removed from now. Like I had a original at one point I was thinking of doing a documentary on James Garfield because he was the third president to get assassinated, and it was like only 1 year into his term. And I was going to talk about how when that happened in 1901, you got to remember this is only 30 something years after Lincoln's assassination. So that means if you were an American and you were like 50 years old, 60, like let's say you were born in like the 1840s or 1850s, that means that you had in your mind living memory of three presidents getting murdered in less than 40 years. That's a really scary thought. Just like in that brief time period, it was normal to every other decade have the leader of the country get killed by some crazy person. I tell you, a lot of people they act like if they didn't live in a time period, they just don't get it, right? But I've always been clued into the ways that things used to be in a lot of parts of America. That's why it's such a shame and a disgrace that there's a lot of African Americans today that don't know very basic civil rights activists, because it's like these people literally in some cases gave their lives for them to have more rights, and they just don't seem to care. But yeah, Megumi, get ready for people to start wondering who the queen was, or acting, or having no idea that that Charles even had a mother that was in power for 70 years. Get ready for that. It's coming. Ignorance is bliss. You didn't kidding. The Queen is and was one of the most iconic UK figures. Period. There's plenty of American material and pop culture that would bring her up just because of how long she had been on the throne. So the idea that you're going to when wasn't she the longest reigning? Yep, she surpassed. I believe it was Queen Victoria. But that's I mean, Megumi, there are people nowadays who don't even know who FDR was. FDR was the longest serving president ever. He was the only one elected to more than 2 terms. And he wasn't a minor one by any means. In fact, actually, a lot of historians say he was one of the three greatest ones, along with Lincoln and Washington, for leading the U.S. through the Great Depression and the and World War II, as well as implementing Social Security. So he was a very important historical figure, and you have people who, in spite of how long he like, listen, when Roosevelt died in 1945, there was and there have been biographers that talk about this. There were a generation of Americans who thought it was a hoax because he was the only president they had ever known. So we went from that to now a lot of these, not even just little kids, but like adults don't know who he is, even though they're eventually going to be on Social Security. How crazy is that? It's just sad, man. That's all I can say. Actually, just to point this out, Roosevelt was the last president before Queen Elizabeth started meeting them, because the first one she met, I believe, was Truman, and then from that point forward, all the remaining ones. Mm. So they are connected in that subtle way, I guess. Longest serving British monarch and the longest serving president, they just barely missed each other. I'm telling you, man, like it's so sad thinking about how I'm not joking. In give it 10 years, people are going to act like Queen Elizabeth didn't even exist. They are going to ask you, who's Queen Elizabeth? They won't even say it in past tense. Like, hey, who was Charles's mother? They're like, who's Queen Elizabeth? I guarantee it's coming. They did the same thing with Ted Kennedy. When that man died when I was 12, or was I 11? Yeah, 11. All over the news. Now I have to explain to multiple people who that was, and it's man, it's not fun, I'll tell you that. Honestly, that is hard to imagine, but I can understand because how strong ignorance is in general. Well, what it is that a person's highest level of popularity, a historical figure, I should say, tends to be the period where they're alive. And then after they die, that after those first 10 years is when you really start to see, are they going to be someone that people remember and still talk about and still discuss and are still fascinated with to some degree or another. Because 10 years is a big enough period to where it's been a while since they passed, but it's also been a period where a lot of like babies and very small children could have like grown up to be around the age of a teenager, which is when your mind really starts to kick in and like develop an interest in this type of stuff. But I wager that in 10 years, you are going to see some very stupid people. And it's not even like, again, it's not even, oh, the information isn't there. They just don't care. And they're not, and some of these kids are not told by their parents who Queen Elizabeth was. So I guarantee you, by 2032 or 33, you're going to see people going, who was Queen Elizabeth? I guarantee it's coming. Because they already are doing that to Thatcher. Thatcher was, like, Megumi, you understand, when Thatcher became prime minister of the UK, it shocked the world. A woman she was considered the most powerful woman of the 1980s. And in the 10 years since she passed away, I've had to explain to multiple, including ones that were of adult age when she came to power, or at least were around when she came to power, I should say, where they weren't like little babies. They were able to remember this type of stuff. I have to explain to them who she was. And Thatcher is apparently, from what I've seen, the most well-versed in pop culture, the most well-referenced in pop culture prime minister besides Churchill. So or I guess after the ones after him, she's the most referenced. But you get the point that like even someone like that with as big of a footprint on the national scene, I have to like explain and describe and whatnot, and it drives me nuts. Hey, I don't know where Jem went, but it was the same thing with Rice, where I was explaining to my friend that before Clinton became the Democratic nominee against Trump, she was Secretary of State, which is actually one of the most important cabinet positions. Because if like three people die, then you become president, and you have to like travel around the world. meeting with various diplomats. Just a very important position that involves a lot of diplomacy. And I said to him that we've had two African Americans as Secretary of State. Um, and he acted like he didn't know what the position was. He acted like Clinton had no job before just randomly becoming the Democratic nominee for president. It was just sad, like just the lack of knowledge that these people have, and like they're not able to appreciate certain things. I knew Jem would come back if we mentioned his girl Thatcher. That was one of his favorite women outside of his mother and his grandma. Dude, I'm telling you, when you just think about the ignorance of people about their own damn country, it is really embarrassing. Sleepwalkers. Well, I told you, I call it the mundane existence because they literally just exist to go to school or work and get their little 5 cents from whatever job they're working, and keep the lights on, and then whatever stuff that they actually are supposedly interested in, they're not really that interested in it because, as I've explained before, many of them don't even know the most basic or behind the scenes information relating to that stuff. So it really is just people who they just exist to survive. They have no desire to learn anything, to go beyond their own, again, their own existence. They just exist. And like I said, with kids, I'm more sympathetic, right? Because they're coming up, they don't know. Like, and I actually have seen some kids who I've explained things to, and they retain it much better than their adult counterparts. But you get what I'm saying, of how you have some adults who it's like they literally only are alive so they can sit around and go, "Oh yeah, this thing happened. I guess. Okay. Oh yeah. Well, I got to go work my job, and oh, there was something on the news. Oh yeah. Oh, there's this new show I like, and I'll laugh at it, and then but I barely know anything about the show and how it came to be, and just any like basic stuff about it. So again, they might have a few things that they're actually interested in, but it's never, you know, to any like serious degree. Sleepwalkers. Oh, there are actually people that sleepwalk. I'm a lot more sympathetic to them because when they do it, it's out of their control. But these people choose to be ignorant. Just a sad era where like I if you t- I bet you if you went back to the 60s, 70s, 80s and you told people that eventually we're going to have a time period where if somebody wants to learn something, like learn who someone was, learn what happened during a conflict, whatever, they can just type it in on this little search engine and stuff will come up. But a lot of people are going to just choose to not do that when they want to know something. So they're going to just not know how to do it or know what it's about. I bet you would have been laughed at. It would have said, yeah, right. There's no way people would be that insane as to have that much information, available for them to know, but then just never do. But you'd be surprised because people just don't care. They don't care. So I said, this whole thing is just sad. Just the way people are, you know. It's very mundane. Because, like I said, I'm not asking for anybody to be some giant history expert, but you know, I feel like I'm not saying this as a joke. Medicare and Medicaid are two of the most important programs launched in the United States in the last 70 years. Uh, so when I say, "Hey, who signed that in the law? Who made that a law?" and you can't tell me, I think that's ridiculous. If you live here anyway. Same thing with Social Security. One of my favorite things is to be like, "Hey, so you know the Civil War, right?" And somebody will say what it was, and be like, "Oh, who was president during it?" They really sit there and they have to think about it. It's like, "Oh, hey, you know World War II, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." Like, "Oh, who was president during that?" Now that's a trick question because there's actually two answers. There's it was multiple. Well, it was Roosevelt for most of it, and then you know Truman for the bottom part. But you get the idea that it's like even a basic question like that they struggle on. Dude, it's just it's so sad. Like, oh my god. No, it's just I'm almost speechless. I don't even know what else to say. The only thing I can say is that for some subjects, I'll try to make a video about it and I'll try to share it around, and that'll be like my one attempt to swat off some of the ignorance, I guess. Because it is true that if everyone is talking about something, whether it's new or old, then people will suddenly become interested in it. That's very true. It's extremely mundane. They don't like. I just couldn't imagine. Hey, so who's that person on the $20 bill? What did they do? I don't know, dude. I don't even like Jackson, not Michael Jackson, the President Jackson, but he was an important historical figure. Whether we're talking about the Trail of Tears or being the only president that got rid of the national debt, he is someone that people, whether they like him or not, should be familiar with. Same thing with Jefferson Davis. It's like the South literally made their own country with their own cabinet, with their own president, and he survived that war uh, and had a pretty interesting life after that, I would say. Wrote I think it was a 2 volume memoir about the conflict, which I definitely at some point want to get my hands on because it's interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Jam, I hope you understand why Davis would be interesting to me. It's like that is the president of the South's attempt at having its own country. That is the person that they picked to lead them through a conflict with the rest of the United States. So I hope you understand where I would be kind of curious about someone like what in the world? No, I know Jim is very upset. He hates when I talk about the South. He feels very offended. I remember my friend was like trying to say that he was against me, like with like using any of the chick stuff in like over there in Alabama because he's like, oh, it's the South and people might say something and they're conservative. I'm like, dude, people will say something anywhere. But secondly, Atlanta, Georgia, and I think you know I'm talking about, Jim. They have a lot of let's just say LGBT people there because there's a lot of people from like California, for example, will move over to Atlanta. So the values of at least of that particular part of the state, I think, are very different from whatever he thinks the rest of the South believes in terms of their views on just anything that's like not considered the status quo, anything that kind of like pushes the envelope a little bit. No, that trip to Alabama was it was nice. I don't regret going. I did a lot when I was there. I know I have a lot of stuttering, but I visited the 16th Street Baptist Church where those four girls were killed. Went to Wallace's grave. Um, there was who else did oh, and then when I was in Georgia, I went to the Carter Library and I went to the King Center and saw the tomb for both of the kings. So there was a lot that occurred when I was there. I just wish I had. The only thing I could have thought to have maybe done was visited some other parts of Georgia because I really did only go to Atlanta twice, and then besides that, it was just Alabama, Alabama. Let me see here. I'm just trying to think who else I'd want to do this for. All this research. I guess maybe. Oh wow, Akatsuki Merchant showing up at the last moment. What it is that he just came out of watching Barbie. Like he started the movie right as I started streaming, so he was like, "All right, I'll catch the tail end of his stream. I'll make a quick cameo at the bottom hour." When you came on that stream and you said that you actually saw it, I just had it took everything I had not to start laughing because that was like my favorite running gag or joke, and just the fact that you actually went to see it. They talk about life imitating art, huh? I'm just glad the Kotsky Merchant has finally appeared. Mm. Also, I didn't even get to tell you he has a sister. Her account is Apple saleswoman, and she sometimes tries to get him to collab in videos, but he's not interested. He said he'd rather just be a commentator. I really did pre-order that on digital. I usually don't do that, but I do want to see it again in a non-big screen format where it's just I can enjoy whatever I want without any people. So whenever it comes out on digital, I'll watch it on day one. That's probably not going to be until let's say October. So either the start of October or the end of September. Probably somewhere in October based off of the box office of this thing. Mm. They're going to try to keep that in theaters as long as they can because they know people are shelling out tickets to go and view it. Like I said, I'm not against. Damn it. Also, Akatsuki Merchant, I was going to ask you, you don't think it's sad that we have people, Americans, who don't know very basic historical figures, like people who realistically their own parents and grandparents were around during the era of, and they don't know who they are? So it's not like something that happened over 100 years ago that nobody remembers at this point. It's like even just relatively recent people who've been alive in the last 50 or so years, and they're like, I don't know who this is. I don't know who that is. Well, because no one cares nowadays, they can't tell you basic info about America's history, but they can search at the top of their lungs about Barbie or something really dumb. Well, it infuriated me because I tried to sit one of these people down and explain stuff to them, and it was like I was talking to a brick wall where every time you tell them something, they don't retain any of it. So you're like, okay, well then what's the point of even trying to familiarize you with this or educate you on this? What's the purpose of that? If you're not going to retain any of the information and you're just going to forget it all once it's told to you, what's the purpose? The answer, there is none. If Megumi was telling me about his hero Theresa May, her upbringing and how she became prime minister and took Britain from sea to shining sea and led them through the EU through the withdrawal from the EU, I would have listened. I would say, okay, let me try to retain some of this. We already explained the thing with Barbie is that it's the current movie that people are trying to grift off of. They're all like making videos about how offensive it is and et cetera, et cetera. And somebody did a good job explaining. They said there's a group of people who will not actually watch a movie, but they'll watch reviews of it so that they can like spite or be nasty towards the people who actually like the film. That is completely true. I've seen that happen where you'll ask somebody, "Hey, so how was this?" "It was horrible." "Did you actually see it?" "No, but I watched this review." So it's sad that like I said, it's really pathetic that in an era where anyone can launch a channel, there are entire channels that have a vested interest in seeing certain films fail so they can make money off of talking trash about them. It's really sad. Well, they aren't being told what to believe, so of course they methodically drool when you relay information outside their bubble. Well, to me, it just became so obnoxious because it's like sometimes it's not easy to remember all of this stuff. Sometimes I have to research things, I have to read things, and when I sit back and I say, okay, here's what happened, and I try to give you a condensed version, I try to like you know, keep in what I think are the most important parts of it. But again, you're free to look into it if you want yourself. And then you're like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, you remember what I told you about? Oh yeah. It's stupid. It's not going anywhere. You're not benefiting yourself or that person because the person doesn't care. They don't. It doesn't matter to them. Otherwise, they would have looked it up themselves. Remember, you used to have people that would go to libraries to read books. Nowadays, they can't even read something that's right on their computer or on their phone. Yes, people take in or digest information in various ways. I mean, look, some people don't like they look at a book that's 500, 600, 700, 800 pages long and it's daunting to them. That's okay, sure. But if you're willing to sit back and read this whole damn thing and then try to like give them the information via speaking and they're still like apoplectic to that, then what else can you do? Other than throw your hands up and say, okay, the hell with it. You're a waste of time. Get out of my face. Because remember, you tried to give them this stuff, and they weren't receptive to it. It's not like you sat back and said, hey, go read this giant book. You said, okay, you know what? I get where you might think the book is too much, so let me try to give you this information by talking to you about it. They still are against doing that or won't retain it, even if they'll supposedly hear you out, but then not remember anything you said. People can't even bother to read a picture book. Oh, we've talked about that before. Like all these damn reviewers, I am such a great movie and writing expert. And that's why you should take what I have to say about the writing of this movie not being good as serious. Well, sir, when's the last time you read a book? I tell you, I'll never get over the people who want me to take them as writing experts can't even read a book with pictures. Because comics were seen as a kids thing back in like the 60s and 50s and arguably in the 70s and 80s too. Well, I'd say more so in the 60s, but you had this line that comics were for illiterate adults and children, and now all the adults are so damn illiterate that they can't even read the thing that used to be for illiterate adults. It's sad. I'm going to tell you about this why this new X-Men movie is so horrible. The writing is just awful. Oh, have you read any of the X-Men comics? No. I already said before that when you're talking about a movie, writing is not the only thing that matters. The visuals, the acting, the music. Um, People just they don't. I guess what it is that I get tired of them always complaining about how much a story doesn't add up or make sense or whatever, and then acting like everything else is just not important. Um, because like I said, if writing was truly the only thing that mattered, these people would be reviewing books. They claim to be a super fan of these characters, but when you probe them, you find they don't care about the actual character, they care about the power and spectacle associated with them. Pretty much. Oh, by the way, Akatsuki Merchant, just to make sure, I hope you don't mention the spoilers for Spider-Man Lotus. Please do not talk about that movie here. I don't want Megumi to go and click it and give them any more views. I don't need to hear you hype them up and say this was the greatest fan film ever, and you love the part where Spider-Man takes off his mask and it's a white clan robe. I'm not interested. So don't bring up that film and the controversy associated with it. I wish somebody would give me 100,000 to make a movie. I bet you they wouldn't be able to pull up no messages of me calling people slurs in DM or private messages. God, man. All that hype for that movie, and it just, I don't know what that was. So, yeah, please don't bring up that film. It came out a few days ago. It's already got over 1 million views. Uh, but I don't need to hear anything else about it. By the way, when I clicked it, At first, I thought something was wrong with my computers. I'm like, wait a second, this is $100,000 movie. Why in the hell is it only 360p? Like I do streams with Wi-Fi that's not the best, and I can get 720. And I found out, I guess that was just the version that he wanted to upload. It was weird. It was like my stream that cost me nothing looks better than their damn movie. I'm gonna look and see if they updated. I hope they did because that's horrible. $100,000 for that low resolution. Oh, 2 million views. Kotsky Merchant, stop promoting them. You're going all over the internet. Oh, now it's 480p. But that's what's weird to me. It's like 100,000 to make a movie. $100,000 people donated for that thing, and it only is 480p. Really? Well, whatever. Mm. 2 million views on that. Like I said, I just can't imagine spending all that money on a movie and then it looks as bad as that does. But I guess people, I don't even know what to say. I, I haven't even looked in the comment section. I'm sure I'll find some gems in there. But look, I'm gonna go and probably get something to eat. I am getting kind of hungry. So if you have anything else to say, let me know. Otherwise, we can wrap this up because I do want to chew on something before I begin my very merry journey. It always I hate that so much. It looks like really cold when you go out there, and then it just warms up. Jim, do you have anything else left to say? I hate to leave you feeling as if you were cheated after a donation like that. I don't want you to think that we took your coins and ran. That's always the worst feeling when you want to do it for like a whole three, because the problem doing it here is that this person's apparently going to come back at like 12 something. It's 11 something now, but I don't want to run the risk of trying to do this and then they come and then there's like a whole you know confrontation. It wouldn't be anything like too crazy, but just like I'd rather have a great week. All right, so we know you've now said everything you wanted to say. Like I said, I'm gonna try to finish part one of that thing this week. It could take up till next week. It's been a really chaotic month, or series of months, I should say. But you're gonna get at least part one of that thing. I'll put it that way. So thanks for showing up, Jem, Megumi, Akatsuki Merchant. I hope next time Akatsuki Merchant shows up earlier. Barbie's not everything. And have a good rest of your Monday and week. And I'll be back on Saturday, probably with something longer, because I'll have to do it from up at the wonderful, terrific, great, amazing, stupendous place of Starbucks. and hopefully find a parking spot that isn't awful. I'm have my fingers crossed, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So thanks for showing up, and I'll try to edit some video this week. I don't know entirely what it is, but we'll see. So with that being said, I'm going to close this out. and begin my journey to find something to eat and fulfill these other tasks. So take care.